All right, all right, all right. It is currently 11:55:15 in Japan,
Mm-hmm.
and it's World Food Day.
Man, what a day.
Oh, I missed having special days, you know?
What is
Yeah.
World Food Day? Grow, nourish, sustain together. Food heroes.
This is like a UN thing. Interesting. Okay. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Atcast, a podcast for the study of modern visual culture. I'm your plucky young protagonist who flies underneath the radar of the oppressive governmental system that uses our very real mortal lives for entertainment. Soup.
And I'm your jaded father figure, cyborg bean man Renu.
Wow, I flubbed that one a little bit, but you know what? It's okay. We'll just keep rolling with it.
It was a really long one.
Yeah. So this week F stands for Absolute Territory because we will be wrapping up the summer 2020 season. But before we get into that, what have you been up to?
What a loaded question.
Yeah.
Well, you know some of the stuff I've been up to because you've heard me complain about it. But let's see. Work has been sucking the life out of me, but what's new?
Right.
Lots of overtime and such.
Ugh.
And it's gotten in it's gotten in the way of some of our anime nights, but thankfully it's lightened up, and I surprisingly got a nice little bonus from it, so that was nice.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah,
I mean,
it
at
was
least,
really
At least,
shocking.
at least if you're going to be pushed to the breaking point, you might as well get
Yeah.
compensated for it.
I might as well get money for it, right?
It would be even worse if you didn't.
Yeah, no, I mean, usually we don't really, aside from, overtime pay, which is good, considering. But yeah, no. In the first time in the years I've worked here, we got a bonus for how hard we worked. But it was also like the hardest we've ever worked in this company, so.
Jeez.
Yeah.
I mean, I can only imagine. I can only imagine in a world that is currently in a state of medical panic that maybe you might have some more work to do.
I did. You know what? We do have more work.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then aside from that, you also heard from me about our little cat crisis, which has been unfortunate. Just to keep things short for our listeners and hopefully not to bring you guys down too much, there was a bit of a medical emergency with one of our foster kittens, Polo. He, like it was just kind of like a normal Saturday, and then I walked around my room around late afternoon, and then I found like a little pool of blood next to my bed, and that was panic. And so then I followed it because there were little kitty paws trailing out of the blood, and there was another little pool outside my room, and I was like, oh my god. So I called my roommate, and we looked around the house, and of course we found Polo. His whole bottom half is soaked in blood, and we immediately took him to the emergency room. We had to take him to a couple places actually, because the first place didn't really find anything wrong with him, and we were suspicious of that because the next day he was instantly like he seemed like he was going to die. So thankfully we found a vet who actually ran a blood panel on him, saw how awful of a state he was in, and immediately got us into one of the best vet hospitals in our city. And so they've been taking care of him, and he's been with them ever since. So he's been in there for about half a week now. And thankfully today, actually, they told us that he's no longer critically ill, which means that he's no longer in need of like emergency services, right? But they're keeping a close eye on him, and they're monitoring him every day. So hopefully, if things go well, he'll continue healing up and he won't need surgery. But ultimately, the cause was somehow he got a tear in his urethra, and yeah, that caused all of the fluids that usually go in in the bladder to just leak out into his abdomen. Right, and he was just sitting in that. So we have no idea how it happened. We have been, asking the vets every time, like, have you gotten any closer to finding, like, an answer? Because we didn't find any evidence, and we didn't hear any noise or anything that would lead us to believe, like, he had, like, some kind of freak accident or something that would cause it to tear. But yeah, so hopefully he'll get to a point where he can just kind of let it heal on its own, because it's apparently not that huge of a tear, but it will take some time to heal. And they don't want to, like, go in there with surgery because that might scar up the tissue, and because the urethra is such a tiny little tube, it might close up that tube, and it'll give him difficulty for the rest of his life if they have to continually, like, remove the scar tissue and stuff like that. So, it's been a very trying week. I've learned that I look like I got stung by 10,000 bees when I am panicking over a kitten, because my face was super swollen over the weekend. But yeah, no, I am optimistic that he'll continue healing up and doing well. So hopefully, nothing super crazy happens. And then, aside from that, I've also been trying to work on Inktober, but it's been very difficult running around in the chaos of trying to help our kittens. So,
of course.
I'm really far behind.
Yeah, we're halfway through the month, so
yeah, I need to catch up. So there's that, and that's been my horribly busy month, half a month.
Oh, yep. Wow! There we go. There we go.
Yep. I didn't have much to talk about last time, but then it all hit this time.
I guess so.
Oh, and it was my birthday recently.
Ah, so happy birthday. I didn't know that.
Oh, thank you.
Why didn't I know that?
I don't know.
Oh, I feel like I've done you
no.
wrong.
See, I'm the parent, and the child isn't really, the child doesn't celebrate the parent's birthday that often. I celebrate your birthday.
I don't know what you mean. My parents fucking love being pampered on their birthday. I swear to God, one of their birthdays rolls around and it's just like, hey, so do you want to cook dinner for 8 people? And I'm like, I guess I can.
My parents are the opposite. They're like, oh, well, wow, we're surprised you remembered. Thanks. And I'm like, I remember every year.
Wow.
I remember because you guys don't remember.
Complete opposite. My parents love birthdays.
Yeah. Oh, well, that's nice. Yeah. Yeah, okay, I think that's it. I think we're good. Okay. Maybe we'll go out for barbecue this weekend to celebrate birthday stuff.
That
so
nice.
That'll be nice. Yeah, like Japanese barbecue or something. Yeah.
Ooh, that sounds lovely.
Yeah.
I'm still too paranoid to go eat at restaurants. Like, my parents the other day were just like, "Hey, so we were thinking about, like, going somewhere with, like, outdoor seating and, like, eating some, like, sushi or whatever." And I'm just like, but we could just stay inside. Like, we could order takeout and then eat in the comfort of our own home, where we're not at risk of being diseased by other people. Because, I mean, it helps that, like, I'm not the kind of person who really enjoys going outside that much. Like, obviously, I really miss being outside and hanging out with my friends, and, I don't know, sitting down at restaurants. I really miss sitting down at restaurants.
Right.
But on the other hand, I'm also, like, I'm okay, I think. I think
you'll live.
I think I'm okay. I'll live. I don't.
You get takeout,
need to.
Right?
Yeah. I've been getting takeout now and again when I can. Obviously, like, eating at restaurants is expensive, so I try not to do it too often. But sometimes you just have a craving that you gotta satisfy. Like, I was craving burgers so badly. I went to a burger place. I got a burger and fries, and then I think the next day I went to the grocery store to get burger fixings to make burgers for the rest of the week. I just really wanted hamburgers. I don't know what to say.
Sometimes you gotta follow your tummy.
Yeah, sometimes I just really start craving a food like very badly, and I like need to have it.
Yeah, I feel that.
Yeah, at some point in the course of the last like month or so, it was pizza, but like specifically like Detroit style pizza. So I had to go find like a Detroit style pizza near where I live, which is like a little harder than it really should be, unless I wanted to drive like kind of out of my way, and I didn't really. But it ended up being fine. The pizza I got was amazing. It was actually the only pizza I've ever had where each slice of pizza made me hungrier.
You had a real craving, the craving that never ends.
It was really impressive. I probably could have eaten like half of the pizza in one sitting, but I didn't because my mom was like, "Hey, we're thinking of getting like fried chicken and beer for dinner tonight," and I'm like, "Oh, I brought this pizza. I guess I'll eat a slice now and then eat some chicken later," which is what I did. But yeah.
But did you get hungrier?
Did I get hungry? I did. After I ate that slice of pizza, I was like, I am so hungry.
Bro, did you read the Phantom Tollbooth when you were younger? It's like
did.
A children's novel.
But
doesn't it remind you?
I don't. Okay, I'm gonna be honest here. I don't remember anything about the Phantom Tollbooth. I'm pretty sure I read it in 3rd or 4th grade.
Okay, I'll tell you the one thing I remember about it is he goes to this place and he ends up eating this stuff called subtraction soup, and the more that he eats it, the hungrier he is.
Wow, that's fitting.
Yeah, that's your pizza. You ate subtraction pizza.
I ate subtraction pizza. Very tasty. But yeah, I mean, there's something like very appealing about Detroit style pizza because it's different than normal pizza, right? Normal pizza is like there's a couple of different kinds of pizza, obviously. Like there's like your New York slice where it's like thin and you fold it and it's like nice. There is like obviously Chicago deep dish, which is like a casserole basically, lots of cheese and tomato. I don't understand people who don't like deep dish pizza because it's just cheese and tomato sauce and meat and then some bread, right? Yeah. It's like I'm having a pizza soup on bread. What is not to like? Like I'm eating pizza soup in a bread bowl. What is not to like about this? I don't. Whatever. Anyway. But Detroit style pizza is characterized by the like pan it's baked in. It's baked in like a high rim pan. So it's a lot like eating bread, like kind of like a Sicilian style pizza where it's like a lot of bread and then the stuff on top, and it's so good because the bread is like light and airy and mwah, tasty. Anyway, I'm getting hungry just thinking about it. That's a problem. So, yeah, I've been going out and getting food now and again, just kind of exploring what's around here because obviously I moved like not too long ago, so it's nice to get a chance to just like look around and see what is available to eat. That's always been kind of the most exciting part of being anywhere, which is like new food opportunities, right?
Yeah, of course.
But yeah. So other than that, I've been playing some Dark Souls. This is interesting. I have been streaming Dark Souls for the last week or so. And
you have. It's always at a time I can't catch it because I'm like asleep.
So unfortunately, due to like my personal sleeping schedule and also the fact that I was playing in the company of some of my friends, so we like kind of play as a crew where I play and then they just watch and commentate and then yell at me when I die.
Good friends.
But it's been basically like it's like 100% like a red eye stream where it's like 12 to 1 a.m. and then like it goes until like 5 or 6 a.m. Like West Coast time. So it's like most of the time like there's not really that many people watch. It's just the people who are in the like channel with me chatting. But sometimes somebody will come in and watch, and that's pretty cool. Sometimes some of my friends swing by before they have to like start working for the day, which I think is really funny.
I thought about doing that.
Because like most everybody I know at this point lives at least 1 or 2 time zones ahead of me,
Yes.
right? So, I mean, really, by the end of the stream, people are like waking up to go to work.
Right.
So I think that's fun. But yeah, I actually finished Dark Souls the other day. So
Oh, congrats!
at the time of recording, which is the 15th, so we finished it last night. Actually, actually technically this morning, if you want to be particular about it. I finished Dark Souls, and I gotta say, I had a really good time playing it, and I probably am going to move on to streaming something else that's not Dark Souls, at least for the time being. I'm planning on playing the next 2 games, like Dark Souls 2 and then Dark Souls 3, and then like probably Sekiro after that, because Bloodborne isn't on PC yet. I'm praying. But I don't own it is the thing. And I don't want to buy it for $40. So I'm just going to wait until like the sort of like winter holiday sale on Steam, and then pick it up then.
Mm-hmm.
But what I did find out was, because obviously I've been having a good time streaming, so I think I'm probably going to do a little bit more of it. What I found out was that there is a Sega sale going on.
Sega.
So I bought Yakuza Kiwami and Yakuza Kiwami 2.
Oh, wait,
for $25.
have you played 0?
I haven't played 0, but I watched somebody play through all of it. So
okay.
I'm aware of what happens in Yakuza 0. So I have the base. I have the very like ground floor basis of Yakuza.
Okay. All right. I will argue that 0 felt a lot more fun for me to play versus the Kiwamis, but that's because it's a much bigger game. It has like a lot more like mini games and stuff in there and quests and all that. But the Kiwamis are fun too in a different way. Yeah.
Yakuza 0 it looked pretty fun.
Yes,
when I watched it being played, and I mean, I wanted to play something that had some kind of story and didn't require me to like solve puzzles or
it has
anything.
A story.
Yeah, it has a story, and I can beat people up in it, and honestly that overall seems like kind of a good time. So I'm probably I'm probably gonna start streaming Yakuza Kiwami at some point if I haven't already by the time this episode comes out. Actually probably I won't have started it by the time this episode comes out if I'm thinking about the timeline correctly. Because I'm doing stuff
so
this
happy
weekend, so.
You're gonna experience it firsthand.
Yeah, I might not do it at like weird hours so that normal people can tune in. I think that would be interesting.
I can watch it.
Yeah, you might be able to watch it. It's funny because like really the prime hours for you are like the sleepy time hours for me. It's like because I get up at like 4 or 5 p.m. right?
Yeah.
So by the time you are like done with work and like have kind of like made dinner and stuff, it's like siesta time for me, right? It's
siesta.
It's that like pre-lunch like wave of drowsiness where you want to take a nap. So that's a problem with me and not with you, a person who lives on a normal regular sleeping schedule for human beings. But yeah, I was interested in starting it, so I'm gonna probably be starting Yakuza Kiwami.
Heck yeah, dude.
Yeah. Other than that, I have officially I think that the timeline works out that I didn't talk about this, but I finally released that essay about VTubers that I was working on for forever. So if you want to see me talk about VTubers it's a very like surface level kind of overview. Admittedly, I think it's a little deeper than like most people who look at kind of VTubers. But like I'm not really going super in depth on things. I'm just kind of going the very like barest level underneath the surface. But touching on some things that I find interesting about VTubers and Hololive in specific, because otherwise I would have been there for about like 8,000 more words. Like 4,000 words is is not nothing, right? Like my essays in college were like probably like 2,000, 2,500 words. So like this is already just kind of like T-posing all over those essays.
Okay.
And like it's funny because I look at it and I'm just like, wow, I like really didn't go in depth at all on any of this, but I realized if I had done, like I just would never have gotten it done. So I put that out there. I might write a part 2 at some point that kind of digs deeper into some more of the stuff. But yeah, I mean, I talk about a bunch of stuff in that. Like obviously, I kind of touch on the financial stuff. I touch on like what the hell ever happened to Kizuna Ai. It's kind of wild, actually.
Oh, I did wonder about that.
yeah. Basically, there was like a scandal. There was some other like VTuber scandal like stuff, like exploitation stuff that was happening that was interesting, but was completely outside the realm of like where VTubers kind of stand now, which is funny, because that was around the time when VTubers were a thing in Japan only and not really in the West, and now they've really caught on here to the point where, you know, Western streamers are adopting VTuber avatars because it's, you know, I mean, there's many reasons for it, right? I talk about that too. I kind of talk about like identity stuff, like what does authenticity mean when you're a streaming personality. I touch on incels, obviously. Like I talk about incels in relation to VTubers because I think when you start to conflate real life and fiction in a way where, you know, people are acting as characters, especially if you are somebody who doesn't speak Japanese and you're watching people who are like vaguely the idea of women, but not because they're technically VTubers, so they're like 2D anime. So it's like kind of like this weird space where like a lot of really uncomfortable. And then there's like this whole subplot about about like Chinese nationalists, like Chinese Communist Party nationalists.
What?
Because Chinese Communist Party nationalists, which are different from Chinese nationalists, as I found out, are very, very, very concerned about the existence of Taiwan.
Okay.
And Hong Kong, right? Because to a Chinese Communist Party nationalist, those are Chinese territories.
Yes.
Like those belong under the sovereignty of China. Meanwhile, you go to one of those places and they're like, yeah, this is Taiwan. Like,
yeah, we are a country separate from China.
we are a country. Yeah. Please recognize us as such. Yes. And China is like, nah, and you know, England is like, nah, right?
Yeah.
So it's a very kind of fraught political situation that like really is only a problem, realistically speaking, if you have sort of financial interest or investment in China, which Hololive does have because they have Chinese talent, right? So when you so basically the scandal, and I promise I won't talk about this for too long, but I didn't go into it in the essay really that much because it just happened when I was writing it, like on the morning that I was gonna put it up. But like basically some VTubers got in trouble. Some of them are suspended right now, like they're on like suspension because Chinese Communist Party nationalists got really, really upset because they showed YouTube analytics, and those YouTube analytics say Taiwan. They acknowledge the existence of Taiwan. And so they got super upset about it. And normally that would be like whatever, right? Because like it's the internet, right?
No,
you don't have to listen to people like that, except for in the case where nationalists are always the most dangerous types of people, and you have Chinese talent that lives in China that could very easily be doxxed by someone dedicated enough, right? Yeah. So I mean, it is kind of a fraught situation where you're like, I wish you hadn't done that. Like, I wish you hadn't suspended people for accidentally using YouTube analytics to say that Taiwan is a country, which it doesn't even do, by the way. They got upset over nothing.
It doesn't say
like countries,
that.
It says geographies, apparently. Right. So, like, really, this was just they got upset over nothing, as nationalists tend to do, obviously.
As it is, yeah.
Yeah, right. As any kind of fanatics tend to do, they will defend whatever hill they want to die on to the death. And like it's so ridiculous to the point where one of the like biggest translation channels for Hololive content was like, well, you see, I think they should have gotten a worse punishment. I think that, yeah. So, like, it's like, I think that you should fire the VTuber who did this, which they obviously wouldn't do because the VTuber in question was Kiryu Coco, and she makes the most money on YouTube, period. So, like, they're not gonna fire her. That's just not gonna happen. And so basically this YouTube channel was like, we're gonna strong arm you, cover core. We're not gonna translate any of your content anymore. We're going to private all of our translation videos until you comply with our demands, which was, I honestly think, the silliest thing I've ever seen in my life. Because if you go to a bunch of people who support 2D anime waifus that stream, and you're like, you either choose them or me, what did you think would happen? Like, in what fantasy world do people actually choose to support you and not the actual talent? I don't understand the logical leap here. And so anyway, the translation channel doesn't exist anymore because everybody decided, lol, we don't need that. What are you talking about?
Yeah.
Right? And it's like simultaneously very, very funny and also like somewhat upsetting because you know that like at least half of the people who are like lol bi are definitely people who are completely super racist against China as a concept and not just the CCP, which is like a very important distinction to make. Even though those two people find themselves on the same side more often than not, it's like, I hate that I have to agree with you because you're right, but you're being really shitty about why. Right? It's like there's definitely people who conflate the existence of China as a country and the CCP, which is not necessarily like good because there's also people that live in China. In fact, quite a lot of them, right?
There are quite a few Chinese victims of certain CCP activities.
Right. So, you know,
that we never hear about. So
it's just kind of like I agree with you that this is silly and that we obviously like why would we ever support somebody who was just like, you either choose the talent or us? And it's like, well, yeah, we're gonna choose the talent. What did you expect? Right. Without the talent, you won't have anything to translate. What are you talking about?
Right.
And on the other hand, I'm just like, okay, guys, can you calm down your racist boners for a second, please? Like It's just one of those things where like people will find any excuse they can to be as shitty as humanly possible.
Oh yeah, absolutely. They'll find any kind of justification for whatever wild opinion they have.
Right. So anyway, that's my rant about VTubers and kind of current VTuber status over yeah. Shall we talk about anime, I guess? I mean, realistically speaking, we could probably just pad out another, like, 10 or 20 minutes talking about whatever we need to, because, like, we only actually watched, like, 3 or 4 shows this season.
Oh, you know what? I do have something else to talk about anime-related, though. I've been watching more Cooking Master Boy, but I started watching the OG one, right? The one that came out in the 90s. And, it taught me how to properly cook bok choy.
Oh, wow.
Apparently, nice. I've been cooking it kind of weird, like not entirely correct. And so I basically remembered what they did in the episode, and then I did it, and I was like, wow, this tastes better. I did it tonight.
Okay. Yeah, how am I cooking it wrong, Renu? Tell me. Enlighten me.
Well, I was cooking it wrong because I skipped the entire step where, so you're supposed to have 2 pots, right? One that has boiling water and one that has heated oil. And so you're supposed to put the bok choy into the boiling water first, cook it in there, and then you put it in the oil pan, and then you cook it really quickly in there, and you put your spices and everything, and that's it. You season it, and that's it. The way I've been cooking it, I just put it directly into just an oil pan, and I treat it like other stir fry, right? And then I season it and so on and so forth. But it it has a very different like texture and taste to it compared to like if you boil it first, which is like
right. Yeah, no, I completely get that.
Yeah, so it has changed mayhaps my cooking life forever. Cooking Master Boy.
I was thinking about this, but I don't actually cook bok choy that often. The last time I cooked bok choy, I just wrapped it in like aluminum foil with some like miso, butter, and garlic, and then I just popped it in the oven for a while.
Yeah, I mean, it's such an easy vegetable to like it's so like nice and crisp and fresh and easy to palate that like I feel like you could cook it multiple ways and have it be like quote unquote right. I just
Right.
I feel like the way they did it in the anime just made it taste better than the way that I had been doing it, so now I have to do it that way.
Well, I mean, bok choy is like really big, so it's kind of nice to get like a parboil on it before you fry it.
Right.
Yeah, I totally get that. Yeah, that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think I would have ever thought of that, but that makes sense.
Right.
This is interesting because like most of the because I watch a lot of like YouTube videos about cooking and like cooking adjacent stuff. So like I just kind of have a lot of weird useless knowledge about cooking. Like, and this is funny, but if you like it's actually true though. You can especially if you're watching like a well-researched show like Cookie Master Boy or like even Food Wars really actually you get a lot of weird sort of ancillary knowledge about how to cook random things in certain ways to make it work.
Right.
Like
right.
Watching food like YouTubers and like food YouTube content has vastly improved my cooking in many ways that I never would have necessarily expected, even though like because like I think people approach cooking in a way where they look at a recipe and they say this is how I should do it, and like it's kind of like when you get handed something and you're like, just do this, right? And you don't actually learn why any of this is the case or how to do any of it, right? Like a good recipe will actually teach you how to cook it, right? Because like things change in kitchen to kitchen so wildly. Like your heat could be different, so like medium high doesn't mean anything.
Right.
The ambient like moisture could be different, so it'll take like longer to do certain things or whatever. So it's really nice when a recipe, especially like good recipes, will essentially tell you like this is about how much time it took me, but this is what you're looking for, right? You want it to look like this, you want it to smell like this, or you want it to sound like this, right?
Right.
Those are good markers to have because those use your senses to actually cook, and it teaches you how to cook things because it teaches you what to look for and how to get there, right? You're learning a process, and you're not just necessarily just one by one kind of following the steps. You're learning how that all flows together to make a dish.
Right. That was it's interesting you bring that up because that was probably how I learned how to make like a proper meringue or like whipped cream, like way back when I was still trying to like learn really basic baking stuff. Because like the original recipes that I used, like they would say whip it a certain amount of time, but it never achieved the consistency that I felt like it needed, right? But then eventually I read a recipe that told me exactly what I needed to look for, and then I did it, and then I got it, and I was like, oh my god!
Yeah, and
my eyes have been open.
Right. Yeah, I mean, obviously, this is one of those things where I care about it because I like to cook, and it's something that I do, to feed myself, obviously, but like more as a hobby than not. I like to go out of my comfort zone and try to cook new things, and it's a very exciting experience. So like when I go out and I look for something like a recipe to eat, or if I want to eat something, right? If I want to cook something, I look at like 4 or 5 different recipes and like think about like why they're written that way, and I just try to pool it together. Which I recommend like cross-referencing your recipes if you have the time or inclination to do so. It's very helpful. But I mean, there's just like it's funny, like I learned a lot of cooking from like cooking shows, and not necessarily like teach you how to cook shows, but like shows where they are cooking. Like, you just learn like a little thing here or two, right? And you're just like, now that's in my brain. Interesting. Well, that's very cool. Yeah. Oh, right. So the point I was going to get to before I got completely sidetracked was, so I only know like the barest minimum about Chinese cooking, and then like even less about like regional cuisine. but it is always very interesting to me because it's so vastly different from how things are prepared in like Western kitchens, where like there is a lot of it's a very different kind of approach, I find.
Yeah.
And it's something that I would want to learn, but also like it's daunting. It's I tell you what, it's daunting. But yeah, like, you know, it's fun. I learned some stuff from like Cooking Master Way where they're like, yeah, this is what's called passing through oil, and I'm like, whoa, passing through oil, cool.
Wherever we can get knowledge, right?
Right. If you're interested in that, Chinese Cooking Demystified is also a great channel to look at on YouTube. Because they do the narration style is very good. They explain to you a lot of things, what you can substitute, what you're looking for. Very good channel. It's very like
cool.
Demystified is the correct word. I'm like, oh, that's what that means. I see. Yeah.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah. I mean, also part of the problem with like cooking Chinese food is obviously like not all grocery stores stock Chinese ingredients, so I would have to go to a Chinese grocery store, or like an Asian grocery store, and then I would have to buy all the ingredients. Which I mean, granted, once I had like the sauces and condiments, I would be Gucci. But like,
it is mostly the sauces and condiments,
yeah. But like, then I would have to go out and buy all those things, and it's like
just make one big trip. Ugh.
Yeah, I honestly, it's like one big trip, and then you're kind of set for a long time because that stuff just doesn't go bad.
Yeah, the only thing you would need to restock on is like if you wanted to get like tofu or certain Chinese vegetables, you know, that kind of stuff. But
right.
Even tofu you can get in regular American grocery store, you know.
That's true.
Yeah,
that's
or
true.
you could get like the rarer kinds of meats and bones and stuff from an Asian grocery store too. Like if you want to make like a pho broth or something.
Oh yeah. That's true. Yeah. So that's kind of my thoughts on cooking, I guess. Speaking of cooking, it's absolutely fucking wild to me. I don't know if you've been keeping up with this whatsoever, but Bon Appetit completely exploded, and like,
yeah, where is it headed now? Because all I heard was the initial outbreak of the drama, and then I didn't hear anything else.
So the thing is that like Bon Appetit completely fell apart because one of the chefs in the test kitchen was like, "Hey, I'm not being paid for video appearances, and also my salary sucks, right?" Because like, she was basically in a junior position, making like $60,000 a year in New York City, like in the middle of New York City. So like, that's no Gucci. First of all, New York is one of the most expensive places to live in the world, behind San Francisco, of course. But that's because San Francisco is impossible to live in. Right, but it's like, so it came out that only certain chefs were being paid for their work on video, and none of the chefs who were being paid for their work on video were like not white, right? Like basically they were only paying the white people, which is really bad. Actually, that's like really bad. Actually, that sucks, right?
Yeah.
And so, you know, she basically Sola came out and said like, "Hey, this sucks," and also our editor-in-chief needs to resign because a photo of him in brownface popped up, which was like also just kind of absolutely wild. And what happened after that was they renegotiated their contracts with Condé Nast, which is Bon Appetit's parent company.
Okay.
And tried to come to an agreement about being fairly compensated. And really the end of that whole debacle was that they just wouldn't offer them anything worth taking, right? Because like even if they were going to be offered better salaries and a wage for or like you know, commission or whatever for video appearances, like they've still been kind of shafted by the upper management at the company for like years now, right? So like it would take a lot more than just like, you know, a little bit more money to take that, right?
Right.
It's one of those things where obviously, you know, you have sympathy for the people who are and like this is something that Sola has come out and said in interviews where like you feel like you should be grateful for the opportunity even though you know you're being exploited, and you keep thinking if you stick with it, maybe something will come down the line for you. And of course, the upper management doesn't care, so it never will. Like the entire structure of the company is built in a way to exploit people, right?
Right.
So Sola and most basically it was Sola, Rick, and Priya who left. As well as some of the kind of like other contractors or freelancers or whatever. I don't know what the exact like employment status is, but basically like there was a mass exodus of almost all the people of color in the Bon Appetit test kitchen. And, you know, obviously part of it was because they weren't being offered a fair wage or compensation, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But the terrible, terrible thing is that right after that, videos stopped coming out because Bon Appetit was like, oh god, you can't put out a video now. Like, you know, whatever.
I mean, obviously.
And just recently, just in the last week or so, they released a video about the new Bon Appetit test kitchen with a new host of hosts and new faces and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Like, they're just checking diversity boxes at this point, right? Like I don't malign anybody for taking the opportunity, obviously. But I, as a person, don't want to support the company itself anymore as a result of that, right? Which sucks because, like, you know, we had this really cool, nice thing that was like getting us through the terrible biting months of quarantine, and then it just didn't exist anymore because they couldn't be bothered to pay their talent what they were worth. And like, I can't overstate this enough. It is so important that people are like valued, right? Yeah. If you are constantly devalued, like that causes damage to you as a person that cannot be financially compensated for, right? It is something that will grind and like wear away at you for the rest of your life. It will take a long time to kind of get any semblance of self-value back, which is terrible and like just kind of how American society functions really at this point, which sucks. So obviously I won't be watching Bon Appetit anymore, but there is like an upside to this, right? There's kind of like a singular shining upside to this whole affair, which is that, you know, as a result of all of this and people seeing just how talented and realizing just how talented and valuable Sola El-Waylly is, she now has a bunch of gigs at other places where they actually pay her. Like, she is now basically a regular cast member of Binging with Babish, the big cooking YouTuber, right?
Mm-hmm.
And she's like being paid like fairly, presumably. I think the contract negotiations is quite generous in her favor, from what I've heard. And she has a lot of creative control. She's not just a side character, right?
Right.
Which is great because people shouldn't be side characters. That's not how you should treat people.
And it's so interesting considering that you would think that Condé Nast would have, you know, a lot more resources than a channel like Binging with Babish that just came up, you know, a lot more recently than them, right?
Condé Nast absolutely has every single capability to pay people fairly. It just doesn't.
Right, which is, you know, it's very transparent when you see one of these talents just go to somewhere else and then they get paid a lot better and they're treated a lot better and they don't have to look back, and it's like it just further exposes, you know, the corruption, unfairness.
There is actually like a big systemic issue at play in Bon Appetit, like in the kind of microcosm of Bon Appetit, that is indicative of the larger kind of problematic structures that exist in the rest of the world, right? It's not an isolated incident. This is just how people are treated everywhere, right? And it would be very cool if people like recognize that, right? Also, where people are exploited in ways where people might not initially know. Oh, Christina Shea also left, I'm pretty sure.
Okay.
Or at the very least, she's not appearing on video. I know all of the non-white talent basically was just like, I'm outie, right? Which obviously sucks because they were really like lovely, talented people who had a lot to offer, and they were just never given the opportunity, and they were never compensated for essentially being second fiddle to people who were much less talented than they were, right? So, you know, it's kind of a shame because we had something really nice, and all like really like it just shows how resistant structures are to change, right? Where like that coming out was like the real possibility for a real negotiation about like how to change a structure to be better than it currently is. And they just decided, well, we're just going to stick with, you know, what we're comfortable with, right? We're just going to keep exploiting people who need the opportunity, quote unquote. They need the exposure to you know, make it, because like it's really fraught being any kind of person with a job, really. Like when your job security is so like heavily tied up in doing what your employer asks of you, it's so constricting, right? You have no freedom whatsoever. It's really quite awful. So basically, Bon Appetit exploded and collapsed under its own weight because Condé Nast could not be bothered to not be racist enough. To not be not racist enough, I should say. Yeah.
All right.
I don't know. Like, I don't know if I could ever support Bon Appetit again unless they really like showed like, hey, this is like the concrete changes we're making. And none of them really have been good enough, which is, boy, it kind of like really doesn't make you that stoked about the November election, does it? Huh? It really doesn't make you super stoked about it at all whatsoever, huh?
You know, get stoked on voting. That's all.
Get stoked in voting, and if voting doesn't work, well, there's always revolution. Speaking of revolution, let's talk about anime. I think it's about time we start talking about anime. Let's talk about Deca-Dence, right? Because I think I have the most to say about Deca-Dence, probably.
Okay.
So Deca-Dence is fucking wild.
Also, in line with our revolution discussion.
Right. So whatever you think Deca-Dence is after watching the first episode, it's not.
Yeah.
Because what... So here's the thing: you see Deca-Dence, you see the trailer, and you're like, "Wow, cool robot," right? And you're like, "Ah, it looks like kind of an Attack on Titan setup." And then you get to the second episode, and you're like, "Oh my god!" So basically, humanity is on its last vestiges. Like it exists only in one city, and they have to fight like colossal odds and giant monsters that want to kill and eat them. But it turns out that all of that is a fabrication by the system, which is a large governing sort of AI in space. And it essentially runs this super tightly packed, efficient, like maximum efficiency system for cyborgs, who are the only like basically remaining species other than like the one group of humans on Deca-Dence, which is what they call the big city. It turns out that they are using the fight against the Gadol, which is the large bug monsters, as entertainment. They're basically playing an MMORPG, except it's real and they control like avatars, but the tankers, who are the human beings, the real human beings, those are real people with real feelings and thoughts. And wow, okay.
Here we go.
Here we go. And what happens is you get this relationship that this like very like father-daughter relationship that forms between Kaburagi, which is like this old jaded, you know, top MMO player, and Natsume, who is this like young plucky girl who has like she's not assigned to be a fighter, but she really wants to be a fighter so that she can, you know, save people. And it's basically everything about it is so wild because it goes in like directions that I just like didn't think it would. It touches on things I didn't think it would, right? And all of it is like, what? This anime is so good.
despite how crazy things get and how many wild turns it takes, there's a solid story here and really solid character development and arcs and personalities that you really root for. And in the end, you just keep watching until the end.
Yeah, it's wild. So like, here's the thing, right? First of all, there's like the entire idea of the system, this kind of overarching governmental body that is essentially a corporation. It's basically a corporation, right? And the MMO is how all of the cyborgs relax after doing work, whatever their work is. It kind of depends. That's not really clear, but it doesn't matter because the system essentially maximizes for efficiency. So like every cyborg is a part of the system. They're all building blocks that make up the system, and they all go and they obediently do their jobs, and then they maybe relax afterwards, right? If that sounds familiar to you, that's because that is the capitalist working day, right? You go to work, you do your work as a cog in the machine, you go home, and then you play video games. That is.
Yep.
That is not subtle, right?
Yep.
And then you have this whole thing about the exploitation of humanity, right? These human beings are at the very like edge of like civilization, right? They're in the post-apocalypse, and they're just doing what it takes to get by, right? They rely on the gadol for fuel and meat, and to eat food, basically. And it's all a lie. It's all made up by the system, so as entertainment, right?
Right.
And that entertainment is necessary because it essentially keeps all the workers in line, right? When they have a chance to enjoy themselves, like they go back to work and they do all their work and stuff, right? So it is this loop where the exploitation of these humans is entertainment for the higher powers that be, the cyborgs, because most of humanity wiped itself out in a giant war a long time ago because humans are bad, and really that's not a surprise actually. That's just real life. So it's interesting because there's a lot of discussion about kind of like this like hyper efficient authoritarianism where everybody knows exactly what they're supposed to do. There's like no real freedom to do what you want, and everybody is a necessary part of the system. Like you're kind of just a cog in the machine, right? And that is safe to people. That is safe to people because the system was created so that it wouldn't repeat the mistakes of humanity, right?
Yeah.
And the idea is that the system governs everything, tells everybody what to do, what to do, so that there's no, conflict, obviously. But that's an authoritarian system, right? Like that's just like the corporation tells you what to do and then you do it. And then they give you the fuel you need to stay alive. By the way, this is not a subtle metaphor. Like they literally pay you in the fuel you use to stay alive as a cyborg. So like, yeah, right? Like your lives are inextricably tied to this big corporate structure from which you cannot escape, or you will literally die because they manufacture all of the needs for your survival and they control that flow, right? And then you have the bugs, which are essentially beings, cyborgs or humans that act outside of the scope of the system, and they are systematically eliminated because they pose a danger to the system, because obviously they do, right? If you have a bug, it proves that there is a way of living, a way of being that is not like in line with how the system works, and that's dangerous to the system, because if people realize that the system doesn't work, well, they're not so inclined to listen to it, right? If they realize that if you realize that better things are possible, you will have no faith in the system which controls you, that promises you that better things are not possible, that you are at the best point in history because everything else has been tried and it didn't work, and now this is the only thing that will and can work, right?
Right. Yep.
So, that's capitalism, baby. Like that's not a super subtle metaphor really at all. But like, there is this recognition of this anxiety of anxiety that leads to authoritarianism. People like being told where to go and what to do because it means they don't have to make decisions for themselves.
Right.
When somebody says, hey, believe in me, I'm very strong and cool and I can take care of all of the problems, I can put everything in its rightful place, that is comforting to people because they don't have to do it. That
Right.
is authoritarianism, right?
Yeah.
And it's interesting because there's a lot of like these interlocking things. Like obviously there's like the aspect where entertainment is the way that these workers are kept in line. The way that entertainment is exploitation, which, you know, looks a little bit like our life in real human world where you know, all of our sort of consumer goods are manufactured in like sweatshops in China or whatever, where like workers are being exploited to such like heights that they have to put suicide nets up so that people stop splatting themselves on the sidewalk to death, right? It's like you are exploiting real sentient human beings for the purpose of entertainment at that point, right? It's not such a direct line in our real world necessarily, but I mean, even if you look at like I just hit it. My brain just hit it. If you look at the animation and video game industries, that's literally what's happening.
Yep.
It is literally people being ground into
is.
dust
Yep.
to produce entertainment for you.
Yep.
And like if you look at the first or second episode, I don't remember what it is at this point, where like you can see this disconnect between the players of the MMO who are like looking at the tankers who don't know that this is all a fabricated game or system, and they're mourning their dead because their friends died, right?
Yep.
The people that they care about just died, and they have this kind of like you know, funeral sequence where they're like saying goodbye, and the people who have no investment in that don't realize why that's important. And then like
Right.
you have all this kind of other stuff about like when the tankers get together, they can accomplish things that are outside the scope of the system that it does not expect. Like when they use all of the housing kits to patch a hole in the wall that was supposed to be used for like an event, right? You would never expect the NPCs of your game to fix the event that causes like something that's supposed to be happening, right? But they did because somebody was able to get them to organize. So, you know, the solution obviously here is organize and you can have a revolution. You can enact change. You can make better things happen.
Yeah, and I mean, before Natsume intervened in that whole situation to get them organized, they were content to just leave it to the gears to handle the giant hole in the side of their wall. They were like, this isn't our job. This isn't our role. We know our role. We'll stick to it. And to their own detriment and to their and it completely lacked any sense. It's like, you guys build things, you have supplies to build things, fix the hole in the wall or else the monsters are going to come in. And they're like, no, the gears are going to take care of it. That's not our job.
Right. It's too big of a hole. We can't fix it unless we all work together.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. And then Natsume inspired them to come together and actually work on it, and they were able to fix it. And yeah.
And then
there's a lot. Yeah.
And then the things that the system uses accidentally create a monster that they cannot control. And so what does the system do in response to that? Well, they just decide we'll just delete the whole thing, huh?
Right.
We'll just delete the whole thing. It is all gone.
Yep.
Which is distressingly close to our global response to climate change, really. It's like, well, we caused this problem. It has now spiraled out of our control. And instead of doing anything about it, we're going to say, fuck it. Let it burn.
Yeah.
Because somebody has to make a little bit more money.
Uh-huh.
That somebody is the Koch brothers, specifically. Anyway, yeah, and like, there's this kind of thing about, like, what, because, like, I was thinking a lot about the ending of Deca-Dence and what it has to say, and it's interesting to me that one of the central kind of pillars of the entire show is this relationship between Natsume and Kaburagi, where like it is this connection between two very different people with very different backgrounds and really like very different like they're worlds apart, literally, and
Mm-hmm.
they build a relationship and they build empathy for each other because, you know, otherwise tankers and gears are separate, right? They're completely separate entities. They don't interact with each other.
Yeah.
Almost at all, right? But Kaburagi and Natsume are a tanker and a gear who have like a real like friendship between them, a real like kind of mentorship, and that empathy is what allows Kaburagi to be like, okay, well, I think it's possible for things to change then, right? I think it's possible for you know, things to be better. And it's interesting because to me that is this idea that what we need in times of duress, in a world that really only cares about you as a number, as a gear in the system. Like, the naming scheme, by the way, is not very subtle either, right? It's a very on the nose metaphor, but it's very good, very well delivered.
I like it, yeah.
But it's empathy, right? Like,
Yeah.
it is the empathy between Kaburagi and Natsume that leads to him being able to see the perspective of the tankers, to see what it's like to live in a world where you are constantly on edge, constantly on the brink of complete and utter annihilation, and like have to like wonder what that does to a person and what that does to a group of people, right?
Yeah.
And so Kaburagi decides, well, this sucks. I'm going to, you know, bust the system up. I will do whatever it takes to break the system then. Because, you know, Natsume is a bug, right?
Yeah.
She's not recognized by the system. She operates outside of it, and she shows Kaburagi that one does not have to be subservient to the system to exist.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And then like there's lots of punching and robots and other stuff like that, which is pretty amusing. All the fight scenes are actually really good in this show. Like, they're really well animated.
I like them,
surprisingly, yeah. And then at the end of the show, basically the system is like, you see, bugs are also part of the system. And then it just kind of leaves off like that. And you're like, wait, what? And like, obviously, I think there is some merit to that idea, especially if you think about what's it called? Mark Fisher's capitalist realism. The idea that like things outside the system are eventually incorporated into the system of capitalism in ways that make them docile. And you could either read it that way, where like, you know, at the end of the story, nothing has really changed. I personally prefer to give it a more generous reading. I think the idea that really what we should do is we should change the system to suit our own needs and not just be subservient to it, is kind of what I see happening in the end of Decadence, where basically they create a new society. And like, this is the thing, right, about the old system of Decadence. The old system of Decadence is complete and utter stagnation, right? Nothing ever changes. It's all the same all the time for the rest of time. And it takes Natsume and Kaburagi breaking down the system and changing very fundamental parts of it, like this separation between, you know, the gears and the tankers, to create something new where essentially, even if the system still exists, there is a possibility for futurity, right? There is a future that is being built. Time is passing again. Like, you're not just in the post-apocalypse.
Correct, yeah.
Like, you're just fighting for survival. You're in the post-post-apocalypse where you're starting to build something new, right? You're not just trying to get something old back. You're trying to build something new, which I think is very important to look at, right? Especially in the face of climate disaster. Jesus Christ.
Yeah, it's kind of like the end of WALL-E or whatever, you know, like
it's very much, you know, it's funny. It has a very a very end of a Disney movie kind of feeling to it, which I think is on purpose, because the stated inspiration for Decadence was Wreck-It Ralph, and there's an entire sequence that is that Monsters Inc. door sequence, but in an anime.
Yes.
So it's kind of unsurprising to me that the end of the series would look like Wall-E, right?
Yeah.
And obviously, like, Wall-E has its own sort of critiques of capitalist culture, the
Right.
idea of consuming a world in its entirety,
Yeah,
and all
I
that
think.
sort of stuff.
Yeah, I think it might be worth if I have you sit down and watch Psycho-Pass as well, because that has obviously really similar themes. But if you imagine the system is at a point where it is at the end of Decadence, where it accepts the fact that there are bugs, Psycho-Pass explores that a lot.
Okay,
Where
yeah.
it's a system that accepts the reality that there are bugs and tries to optimize on that.
Right,
So it's not
yeah.
necessarily in an optimistic way, but it is a very interesting experiment.
I've always been interested in Psycho-Pass because it's one of the few anime that's like very explicitly cyberpunk. I guess. In setting at least. Obviously, I don't know how much you can be cyberpunk while also your main characters being cops, but like, you know, negotiating the corrupt system as a person, right, is always an interesting theme. That makes sense. I will definitely have to sit down and watch it at some point because that's very interesting.
Yeah, maybe we could do like an episode or whatever, part of an episode about it. Yeah. I think Decadence is definitely, just like overall, a really interesting watch. If you are on board for a wild ride but a solid character story strung throughout, then yeah, it's a great watch. It's so fun.
Yeah, it's super, super solid.
Yeah,
like 100%. I would recommend this as a really good anime, and it has some interesting things to say in its very I'm not gonna say ham-fisted. It's not ham-fisted because it
has a giant robot fist in it, though.
it does have a giant fist in it, right? Ham-fisted implies that it is something that is forced. It's not forced at all. It's not forced, completely into the narrative and themes of the show. It just also happens to be a very obvious metaphor, right?
Yes.
It's not the kind of subtle. It's not the kind of subtle metaphor that, you know, you might expect from God, I don't know, like Cowboy Bebop, I guess. Like Cowboy Bebop has pretty subtle metaphors. But like, yeah, Decadence, like Promare is just kind of just like, we're gonna die if we don't fix the world. like we're gonna die a lot, so maybe try and fix it in the face of climate change, climate disaster, and eco-fascism, right? All of those kinds of things, right? Anyway, those are my thoughts on Decadence. I probably have some more, honestly, but like I can't recall them off the top of my head, and it's just best to move on right now.
Another essay, but on Decadence.
Oh my Lord. It's really good. It's really good. And I will say I did really like their the kind of sub narrative about disability throughout Decadence, about what it means to be a disabled
was nice.
person.
Yeah.
It's always interesting when you see disabled characters in anime because it's not super often, and like whether the portrayal of them is good or not is not really something that I can answer for you. I think it's really good in this, personally speaking. Obviously, I'm not a disabled person, so I couldn't say, for instance, but like, I like that Kaburagi gives her this arm and says, "This is not your weakness, this is your strength." I think that's a really, really great moment. Like really undervalued great moment in the season as a whole. I think that moment was awesome, right?
Yeah, I really liked before that too, like the tension between her and her friend, and how her friend keeps looking at her hand and like definitely treats her disability as a disability, and it creates such a huge rift of discomfort between them.
Yeah, right? There's this difference between somebody who essentially feels pity for you, who says like, oh, it must be so hard to live like that. Like, I don't know how you live like that. And somebody who sees that and who recognizes like you have potential in you that is not only not like hindered by that, by your disability, it is actually aided by your disability, right? Like you have potential that other people do not have because of it.
Right.
And I think that is kind of, at least for anime, that's awesome, right? In many ways, like that's what makes like the disability representation in Fullmetal Alchemist so good, because not only are there a lot of people with, you know, physical disabilities, because the context is obviously like they live in Wartown, USA, right?
Wartown, Europe, okay.
Wartown, not Germany, yeah.
Yeah.
But like, obviously because like, it makes sense in the fiction for a lot of people to have, physical disabilities, but at the same time, there's a very robust system that addresses it in a way that doesn't necessarily solve the issue, I guess you could say, but in a way that like makes it something interesting to explore, where the Elrics see their disability, right? The lack of body or arms or leg, as a testament to what they did wrong, right? They see it as a direct result of something that they did wrong and something that they want to fix for various reasons. And the thing is, like, if it was just like, I'm a person without an arm, I would like my arm back, right? That would be one thing. But the fact that relationship is actually more, I did something wrong, I need to help my brother, and I did something wrong, I need to help my brother, right?
Right.
That core is what makes it so interesting and complicated and nuanced and like really great, because they're different levels of disability as well, right? Where Edward does not face the same challenges that Alphonse does, and they fight about it sometimes.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
They get into an actual fight about it because it's like, how do I know that, you didn't just invent me or whatever, right? There's this really interesting depersonalization that happens. Right?
Yeah.
And like I think like people have said this definitely better than me, because like, obviously, as I said, I'm not a disabled person, but like people have, come out and said like, I'm kind of sick of people who are like, it's not good to not wish you had the disability. Like, that's just kind of, that's fine to not want that, right? Obviously, like, it makes your life harder in this world. Like, it's okay to not want that, but it's also okay to like, both of those things have to be true. So there are characters in the show that continue to have their disabilities, and they really like what that gives them, right? They love automail. And to Edward, he is really grateful for the opportunity, and it gives him opportunities in the same way that Natsume has them that he wouldn't otherwise have. Like, he can transform his arm into a sword, right? Like, that's really handy. And he pulls tricks with it all the time, where he's just like, I gotcha, it's not made of metal anymore. Ha!
Yeah.
It's polycarbonate, sucker. Right? And all those moments are super, super great.
Right.
And Deca-Dence kind of has very similar notes about it, where it's like, this is not your weakness, this is your strength. And I think that's really cool, at least personally. So
yeah, no, I definitely agree.
Yeah. God, Fullmetal Alchemist is so good, though.
It's such a good story.
God, we should just revisit Fullmetal Alchemist. God, I love that show. Anyway, sorry. Let's talk about Fruits Basket next, I guess.
Sure.
Fruits Basket got really fucking wild. I know. So I never read the original manga, so like this is like,
okay.
At the
this
point,
was new territory for you,
right? This is at the point where like we're completely in uncharted territory for me. I have no idea what the hell is going on.
Okay. You got all the new stuff for you is like the really, really deep backstory stuff.
boy, it's like, I knew some of the twists, obviously, like the fact that the head of the Soma family is actually a woman, even though like it's kind of supposed to be like an androgyny secret kind of thing,
right?
Man, Fruits Basket is kind of a lot. Like obviously we've talked a lot about how like it talks about like what is love, how is like how is that formed, I guess, like what shape does love take, what does it mean to be in love, all it kind of addresses all those questions. And then at the same, because like obviously shoujo kind of is about that, but then at the same time it's also just like, what is abuse, what counts as abuse, how do abusive tendencies manifest, how does abuse replicate itself as a cycle? How does it affect people who are abused? How does it affect people who do the abusing, right? It's incredibly uncomfortable. It's incredibly uncomfortable to see like all of these sequences of like Akita-sama just like being such a bad person, right? Being so terrible to the people around her, and like treating people in such a terrible way. And you know that like that's also the result of circumstance, right? It's like,
yes,
you like it happens as a result of kind of growing up in an abusive structure. So like, you know, she replicates all of those behaviors, and they trickle down and affect everybody else in the family. Even if they don't choose to continue the abuse, they have ways of approaching problems and their own feelings that are not healthy, and it takes a lot of work to unlearn those behaviors and to act in a way that is, you know, conducive to being a nice person to other people. And like there's kind of, and you know, this kind of has to do with like the Bon Appetit stuff, but like there's a large part of it where people, most of them, really, like all of the children, just don't and can't recognize their own worth, their own kind of self-value, because it's been so continually torn down by the structure of the family, right? It is an abusive structure. For what reason? I don't actually know. I'm sure that it'll tell me later about why any of this is happening at all, why there's like a curse, it can be broken, though. I think that's really interesting as a metaphor, but I can't parse it with the information I have right now. I have to wait until I have some more to like piece it together.
Yeah. They do talk about it more.
yeah. I'm sure it'll become very, very explicit, but it is interesting to look at the curse as kind of this, essentially this like escape from the abusive cycle. Because like the thing about the zodiac cycle, right? And why it works as a metaphor is specifically because it's about blessings, obviously, but it's also about exclusion and that kind of stuff, right? Like,
yeah,
the rat is it basically lies to the cat, and that's why the cat is not part of the zodiac, and that's always a part of the story that you're just like, oh, that kind of sucks. Right? And the rat essentially cheats his way up there. But it's interesting because you get the structure of that story, and then the structure of that mythology has ramifications for how the characters interact with each other, right? Like, the person who is the cat is like would obviously just be like, whoa, hey rat, why would you do this to me? This sucks, right? And so naturally you have that tension between Yuki and Kyo, and it transforms into something else when Toru enters the picture, and she kind of changes how these people relate to each other. And I think that's really interesting. It's very complicated. Like, I swear to God, I need a relationship chart to like parse this, because sometimes I'm just like, all right, who's cousins again? Oh,
right.
I do like that it doesn't shy away from like Fruits Basket. I think is remarkable in the respect that it treats teenagers as people who have interiority and complexity and have feelings, but also are largely the result of how they grew up, right?
Yes.
They're still malleable, they're still flexible enough to change pretty quickly,
right,
when introduced to new environments and new stimuli. But at the same time, a large part of the way they are in the moment is because of how other people tell them to be, or how they learn to be from the people around them, right?
Right. They're still in that kind of middle ground of trying to figure out who they are and the kind of people they want to be, but they're also, very much subject to their parents still, and what their parents say and do, and what Akito wants them to say or do.
I will say, I've mentioned this before, there's one absolutely draining thing about Fruits Basket, which is the amount of time and effort that is put into like this pining relationship between a 16-year-old girl and a 25-year-old man. Like, I don't care if they ever see each other ever again. One, I don't want them to, but two, stop it. Stop it. That's a 9-year gap for a 16-year-old. That's massive. That is so big. That is more than half of that girl's life. That's not okay.
We talk about it a lot in terms of, like, you know, it was the 90s, and yeah, like when I was reading it back in the 90s or whatever, early 2000s, it was like you end up kind of rooting for the relationship in a way because you see how much it upsets Arisa, and you really love Arisa.
Right, exactly.
And
you're like,
so,
I want to root for you,
yeah.
but not in this certain respect. Like,
right,
calm
but
down
you don't
a
think
little.
about it. They don't talk about it very much how old he is. I don't even remember if they say it
Jesus.
explicitly or if it like
Oh,
is
God.
just one of those side bios, you know, because they put little side
Right,
bios
yeah.
for each of the characters. Yeah. So, yeah, no, you the fact that it is a very we're very conscious of it as we watch the anime. Let's just say that.
And like it's not the only thing too. There's a lot of kind of one-off moments with both of Toru's friends where they're just like, sexy 25-year-old man. It's like, stop it. I mean, it's fine for like children to have crushes on adults. That's normal, I would actually say, right? Like
Sure.
that
Yeah.
people develop affections in all kinds of weird, funky ways, for whatever number of reasons. And it's perfectly normal for for somebody who is like in very like impressionable stages of their life to look at somebody who is like an adult human being, like a composed person with a lot of complexity and nuance, and like they know who they want to be, etc., 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 and like find themselves enamored with that, right? Like that's kind of the thing that like sucks about age dynamics and like power dynamics, where like the reason a lot of you know, young girls kind of gravitate towards people who are a little bit older tends to be because, like, I don't know if you've noticed this, but like 16-year-old boys like suck a lot. Like they suck a lot. Like a lot. So like I don't really like, it's not like young adult men are really any better, but like a little bit, right? But like, okay, so the problem is not them having feelings for somebody who is much older. That's I would say honestly fairly normal. That's kind of rote at this point.
Right. They're still developing feelings and they've got hormones raging. And
it is more of an issue if your 25-year-old man decides, I do feel that way, but it's not okay according to society. It's like, well, yeah, it's not okay according to society. It's not okay anytime. Like, this is like such a stark, like, it's such a large age gap at such an impressionable young age that okay, here's the thing. Here's a blanket statement that I'm going to make that I'm almost certain holds true 500% of the time. Okay, so if a 25-year-old man has any romantic interest whatsoever in somebody who is 16, that man should go to jail. Like that is not okay or good, and that might point to some other systemic issues that led to that, because that's not, I'm gonna say that's not normal. I think like when I, as somebody who is like 23, rapidly approaching 24, Jesus Christ, it's already that midway through October. I'm losing it.
You're gonna be as old as this guy soon.
Right. So the thing is, like, when you are around my age, I have not looked at a single 16-year-old person and ever thought to myself, like, I have never not thought to myself, looking at a 16-year-old, this is a baby. That's a baby.
That is a child.
That's a baby child who doesn't know anything because they're a baby child. They have you know, complex feelings and interiority and you know, all that kind of stuff. But that's a baby. Like,
that is a child that I guide forward into the future if they are any part of my life, but otherwise that's it. Like,
I barely want to talk to 16-year-olds. I don't understand how you could be 25 years old, look at a 16-year-old and be like, yeah. It's like, I look at a 16-year-old now and I'm just like, this person is like, they have the face of a 12-year-old.
Right, you're like, how do I talk to this person? They are a complete different generation than me.
Like, I don't want to be condescending in any way, but I'm just legitimately kind of just like, what do I even talk about with
right.
you? Like,
how do I relate with you?
Like,
you know?
Hello, fellow kids. How about that TikTok and the Fortnite? Huh?
Okay.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Those things? Yeah?
Yeah, this is why parents have it hard. Because the generation gap is even bigger.
I don't know whatsoever. And this is one of those things where like people forget what it was like to be in high school pretty quickly, I would say, honestly. Like, people lose empathy for high schoolers real quick. Except for me, I never had any to begin with. I'm kidding. Anyway, it is one of the most kind of jarring things in an otherwise like really sensitive and well put together anime that explores mature themes that teenagers really do face regularly.
Right.
And in a way that doesn't condescend to them about it, like about just saying like, things will get better. It's like, yeah, things will get better, maybe, but also they suck right now. So like, you know, and obviously sometimes it's just like that. Sometimes you just have to wait until it gets better. But like, also, I remember when I was like in high school and people were like, it gets better. And I'm like, really? This sucks now. Will it get better? And then I got older, and it did not get better. It got better in some respects. It got much worse.
Right.
In
Some
others.
things
now
get
I'm
better.
expected
Some
to
things get worse.
make money and stuff, and that sucks.
Yep.
But yeah. I mean, other than that, like Fruits Basket is like, it's great. I'm kind of shocked it took this long to have an actual remake for the rest of the episodes. Because it really sets the bar for how to approach like mature topiks in a way that is both sensitive and interesting and nuanced and not reductive at all. I like that Toru is not necessarily fixing everything by being the romantic love interest, right? Because that's obviously something that you're afraid of. But when Yuki realizes like, I don't actually have romantic feelings for Toru necessarily. It's more that like Toru is fulfilling an emotional need in me that was deprived from me by my own physical mother.
Yeah, that's
right?
the fact that they actually explore that in like a very like he just goes through it, he realizes that, and then you're along there for the ride. But then there's like adults there adults out in the world that exist that don't realize that kind of stuff, and then they use people that way, that. This teenage boy in this story is able to go through the whole 9 yards and realize, I don't really actually, like, I'm trying my best to be as honest with myself as possible and figure out what I want, and I realize that it's not her necessarily. And I like that she's around. That's it.
I do like that what it is it's not a kind of like it's not a kind of like Cinderella Sleeping Beauty situation where it's like true love conquers all. It's like the effort that you put in for people you care about will have positive impacts on their life, probably, right? Like I think that's I mean, obviously, like, that's a much more interesting idea to me personally. But like when Yuki is like yes, Toru fulfills in me something that I was missing as a stunted youth because my mother never gave me any affection because my family's terrible, right? It's not just I'm using Toru for my own character development. It's the relationship between us as human beings, as people, has strengthened both of us, right? It has been mutually beneficial for both of us because that's generally speaking how relationships work. Right. I like that the strength of characters comes from their relationships and not necessarily from internal power. Toru is just kind of like, she's not that helpful in most respects, but she's just a really good friend, and that's honestly what most of these kids just need. They just need someone to be a good friend to them. And I like that a lot because, obviously I love found family tropes, but like this has a very strong found family trope, even though most of these kids are like kind of related to each other anyway. But it's like, we found family in our family because our real blood immediate family is kind of shit, actually.
Right. Yeah. I think she provides an important role to like kind of help normalize them in a way that is like, you know, you are a person outside of your familial bonds. Like,
Right,
it's not just
exactly.
about your soma blood or whatever, or your zodiac curse.
Yeah,
Like, you are a person outside of that too.
You are more than the circumstances
Yeah.
of your birth, and I think
Exactly.
that's an excellent kind of like message to send.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I love that a lot, right? Because like obviously most of the tragedy of this show comes from the circumstances of one's birth. Do they define you? They don't have to. Sometimes you just need a helping hand to figure out like how to escape that. And I think that's great. Like really, I think that resonates to this very day with people.
Yeah.
Where like, you know, the stronger you have relationships with the people and the more you care about each other, the stronger you will be as a unit, as a whole, right? You might even be strong enough to topple the system.
Here we go again.
Viva la revolucion. Anyway, let's talk about God of High School. How about we?
Yeah, let's roll right into it. Very different from Brood's Basket.
You know, it's interesting to me. God of High School is because it. I have never once, I think, in my life, watched a show where there is a single continuous narrative, but none of it makes any sense in context of itself. None of
okay. So the narrative that I gathered, all right, if I were to really think about it, is that there was a God of High School tournament, and then the main character's team won, and that's all I know.
Yeah. So to start with, the plot is already kind of convoluted in interesting ways. Where like you have the God of High School tournament, which is where a bunch of high schoolers fight each other injected with nanomachines to monitor the power levels. And the idea of the God of High School tournament is to farm for children with fighting potential, with the potential for an ability called Chakuriki, or Spirit, which is essentially, no joke, the ability to summon a stand. Because gods and heroes are real, and they can give you powers if you summon them with your latent power. And the God of High School tournament is meant to fish these children out of the crowds, I guess, and then use them to fight a war against a cult that wants to cause Armageddon by bringing their god to Earth. They want their god to kill all other gods and be the only one. And everyone else is like, yo, that's kind of whack, but we need kids. One of them is a key. The key does, I don't know, something. It's contained within the Fox Boy, and the key is used to gain special power and unlock something. Okay.
But okay, so that's what I thought, that the key gave him the fox power, but he already has the fox power regardless of the key, so now I want to know, what power did it give him?
I think he had the fox power, and then the key was inside of him all along. I think. Yeah,
but then, okay, so like, what does the key do for him? Because for the other guy, it made him supercharged, angry boss guy, right?
I don't think it did anything for anyone else, and I don't know why or how. God of High School doesn't make any sense. It makes almost no sense. I swear to God, I watched it like week to week, sometimes even like 2 episodes at a time, and like even though there is a continuous narrative that is happening, I like legitimately could not tell you the sequence of events that actually like occurs. It's fucking wild. Now, this seems like kind of a harsh criticism. But like really ultimately I just don't think it really matters. Like God of High School is so much not about its plot. Like its plot is complete and utter bullshit nonsense. And yet it's so fun to watch because the animation is great and it's just people beating the shit out of each other continually forever. Like there's some slight emotional stakes, I guess, if you care that much. And like you see what these characters are fighting for, but most of the times it's just, I like to fight. We're gonna punch good.
Okay, so if I were to take it in the context of the plot is just a contrivance to watch the characters fight each other, right? Tends to be the case in more battle royale kind of stories, then I get that, but I feel like the plot of this anime was a lot wilder than a lot of other battle royale plots. If I were to
no, for sure.
Yeah, like if you were to take the plot of a fighting game, you do eventually fight God or whatever, but I think even then that it still kind of makes more sense than this.
I think the thing about it, right, is that there is a certain level of God of High School where it feels like, and I want to go back and I want to go back and read the webtoon to like see how the webtoon handles it. Like I want to see if it's really just like a directing problem, or that they tried to adapt too much of the story, which again would be a directing problem. Or what, like if it's a pacing issue or whatever. But things happen so fast and so like wildly and so all the time that like it is nearly impossible to keep track of what is actually happening, aside from the fact that two characters on screen are fighting each other, and that's pretty cool. Like, I think it's nice that we have this like core set of characters. You have the trio, and they have their own arcs, which makes sense in and of themselves.
Right.
But maybe not necessarily in the entire context of the show. But I like that like we kind of have development for all the characters. They grow in ways, they achieve new powers. One of the girl just summons Lubu because that's her stand is Lubu.
I do think that the main at least the two side characters to the main character, they have their character development pretty early on in the show, and then they kind of really play second banana later on. But yeah, she summons freaking Lubu, and I was so hyped. But then that was about the peak of it.
Yeah. Well,
after that, Lubu doesn't really do a whole lot, unfortunately.
That's true. He just kind of shows up, and then like we screen wipe, and she's like dead, basically.
Yeah.
She doesn't die. But like, I feel like, and this is interesting, but I feel like God of High School, the anime, was like one big prologue to the real plot. That's what it feels like to me. It feels
but what is the real plot then?
I don't know. Kill God?
What do you...
I couldn't tell you. I legitimately
But they
couldn't.
summoned God twice, and then they beat him back. It's like, where do we go from here?
I just know that, whatever was happening, my eyeballs were enjoying what was happening.
I remember just constantly, like maybe every 10 minutes or so, asking what's happening.
And the answer was always, I don't fucking know.
Yeah,
like, honestly,
the answer was always,
if you
I don't
missed
know.
half of an episode and then you just tuned in, you
Yeah.
would have exactly the same amount of context as somebody who started it from the beginning.
Yeah.
I kind of love God of High School for how just absolutely buck wild it is. But at the same time, it is very confusing to try to keep track of. There's a lot of characters. Most of them don't really do all that much. Some of them exist just to be ganked, which is like, wait, what? We saw this guy's backstory. Why is he getting ganked?
Yeah. What? Okay. Can you, now that we have finished the season, can you explain to me the beginning of the show where the tournament runner uses his cross power to like squish an island?
I don't remember that far back.
You don't remember the very opening sequence where
I remember he squished the island. I don't remember anything else about it. I don't know. It's interesting because it seemed like he was a bad guy, and then he wasn't a bad guy.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, he seemed like extremely a bad guy, and then he wasn't a bad guy, and you're like, okay.
And then you realize, he's protecting us from the god squishing the world, I guess.
Protecting
like
us from literal Armageddon, Full Metal Alchemist style. I could not.
Yeah, I think
could not
for me,
explain what was happening.
Yeah, no, the plot really, I lost track of everything when right around the time when we see Kagura beat up Due. Sorry, I don't know. I don't remember how to pronounce his name. In the bathroom.
I also don't know how to pronounce it because they're pronouncing like Korean names, but in like Japanese.
Right.
Like they
So
call it,
how
they
would
call
you
him
pronounce it in
Daewee.
Korean?
I don't fucking know. I don't know what that name would be.
Okay.
But like
They call
Daewee, I
yeah,
guess.
I guess yeah, where she starts fighting him in the bathroom for some reason, right? She's and then after that, it's just a bunch of events that happened that don't really feel like they were strung together for me.
Yeah, that's I think generally the feeling of it. It's like there's this weird like feeling of disconnect between any of the pieces of the story, even though
Yes.
technically speaking the story is moving forward. It is
Right.
It seems like a problem of like directing or editing where it's just the story does not cohere itself.
Right, because up until that point, it had just been about them advancing in the tournament, and that was very straightforward,
Which is like,
right?
That's very
Yeah.
like, you can just handle that episodically. You don't necessarily need to
Exactly.
dive into any of it.
So to go from that and then to them losing the tournament structure, everything just went out the window.
Yeah, it feels like the tournament structure carries over to the rest of the show that is not a tournament. And you're like, wait, what? Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
Like, it's hard to say what the exact like structure of the story was. Like, I don't know if it's supposed to be one big tournament arc. I don't know if it's supposed to be an adventure. I don't know if it's supposed to be whatever it. I couldn't say.
Yeah. It was entertaining to watch, if only with friends, so that we could all be very confused together.
Yeah, it's a visually like well put together show. It's very well produced. I will say.
I just don't know how to feel about it at the end. I guess I'll watch more of it because I still don't know where it's going.
Yeah, I just keep watching to figure out
expect.
what happens. Right.
Yeah.
Honestly, I would just say, turn your brain off. Let your eyes do the work.
Your brain is going to struggle to keep up and it will continue wanting to comprehend what it's seeing. But at the end of the day, I do think it's a show where you're supposed to just not think about it at all.
I believe that is correct. All right. Shall we move on to one thing that you watched that I didn't? I didn't watch anything else.
I finished watching Fugou Keiji Balance Unlimited because they finished it this season.
Very nice.
Yeah. Okay. So we went in very strong. Like the show started really, really strong. And then the pandemic happened. And so you can kind of see, and I don't know if this was because of the pandemic or because of budget reasons, but you do notice like kind of a quality drop in a way. Like the scenes and the way that the show flows just isn't as exciting, and the way that the plot unfolds isn't quite as tightly written, like that kind of stuff. But it is, it's like solidly okay, I would say, overall for the rest of the show. The one episode I demand that everyone watch.
Oh.
If you watched like the first couple episodes of Fugou Keiji before the pandemic, you have to watch episode 4 because it is about our rich boy, and he no longer has money.
Oh.
And it is so good. Like, I was like, if the rest of the show is like this level of like entertainment, I'm so down. Unfortunately, it wasn't. But that episode alone, just watch that and then you'll have such a good time.
I see.
You will feel completely fulfilled with watching it. And
so watch first 4 episodes and then the last one.
Yeah. I mean, the last one is like, okay. The way that the story develops, I expect that you probably won't continue.
I probably will not.
You won't finish it. Is that it gets more into rich boys' families' backstory, and turns out that his father was involved in some really serious experimentation with a mysterious element that would be able to power the world more efficiently than nuclear power, right? It's like that kind of like James Bond, like world ending kind of plot, right? Where people are like really like basically if this research gets out there, then it has the potential to like destroy the planet because people are gonna want to use it for weapons and war and stuff like that, that kind of thing. And so you find out also that that Rich Boy's dad murdered his mom, or that's the understanding anyway. And then there's more intrigue behind why that happened and all this and that. And so they have like your villain twists and stuff like that. Like this is the real villain, this is the real villain, but then later on it's like, no, this is the real villain, like that kind of thing. So it feels like the rest of it is structured very much like, it's James Bond influences, those kind of action thriller kinds of stories, but maybe because of the pandemic or maybe, other reasons, but it didn't feel very exciting for me, right? Like, you expect these kinds of sequences to be the strongest hitting points because if you're writing an action story, then your action sequences need to be really strong. And for me, they were just kind of middle of the road. And I don't know, maybe I'm being too harsh on it or whatever, everything considered. But if I were to just judge it as just in its own, like as its own piece of media, regardless of circumstances, it was okay. It wasn't bad, but it wasn't like I wasn't on the edge of my seat at all during like the rest of the show either.
Solidly okay.
Solidly okay. Yeah.
All right. Well, that's good to know. That's good to know.
Yeah. And I guess that's it. We really didn't watch a whole lot for this season, but a lot of it is because it didn't. There wasn't much of a season. This was kind of
a quiet season.
Yeah.
Aside from like a handful of like pretty to really good shows, like it was not remarkable. If you want to watch us go through the trailers for the fall 2020 season, that is up for patrons on our Patreon, and we wrote down way too many. I'm
excited to watch them.
Yeah, there's a lot of really interesting stuff. I don't know what it is. Maybe, it's probably just because like Japan just has less COVID overall, and they just got back to work. Really,
I think they got back to work, but also maybe a bunch of the stuff that was slated for summer ended up falling, into autumn because
I know that there was some stuff that fell through the cracks that we definitely want to revisit. Like, for instance, at some point, and I don't remember, I don't know when this was supposed to come out, but like at some point Great Pretender came out on Netflix, and I heard no fanfare about it whatsoever. I just heard, by the way, Great Pretender's out, and I'm like, what? Yeah. So we watched the first episode of that, and it's absolutely fucking wild, and we need to watch more of it.
I want to watch more for sure.
And obviously we started Beastars and haven't finished it yet. The manga apparently has finished, as we kind of found out, which is
I do actually want to finish that show too.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So we should also finish Beastars. We might try to aim for like a catch-up episode where we just kind of catch all the anime that fell through the cracks that we wanted to watch more of. I'd have to comb through like all the stuff that we didn't watch though. And that would be kind of a struggle, but we do it for you, the listener. Thank you for listening. But yeah, so that's where we're at with that, I guess. It's kind of a shame. Like I really wish Netflix just came out with anime week to week, but that's not the first nor last time you'll ever hear me complain about that. So it's kind of it's kind of whatever. But we if you want to listen to our stuff in that regard, we're joined by our friend Vivi, and you can listen to us react to trailers. It's always quite an amusing time. We roast a lot of the trailers because most of them are pretty bad. Like some of them aren't even bad shows necessarily; they're just bad trailers.
Some of them are really unflattering trailers, and it's really sad.
Specifically, seeing some excerpts from episode 1 of Akudama Drive, and seeing what happens in the trailer. The trailer is so boring. The trailer of Akudama Drive is so boring, and then you learn that it's like a cyberpunk anime where like Japan is split into 2 different essentially countries, and it's written by the Danganronpa guy, and you're like, what?
Oh, okay.
It looks very stylish, actually, but we definitely did not look at it in any favorable light when we watched the trailer. But I've since added it to the list, to our never-ending list of anime to watch. But yeah, if you're interested in that, obviously, you can go find that on our Patreon. I'm pretty sure you can get that for like $1 a month or whatever. I should say that without knowing for sure. But like, yeah. Other than that, I don't know. Like, what are you gonna be up to, Renu? Where can we find you?
You can find me on Twitter and Twitch and Tumblr at SwanDrawn. You can find me on Instagram at swan.drawn. I have been streaming commission art, and
Very nice. Very nice.
yeah, I've been playing copious amounts of Monster Hunter World in my free time.
Oh, of course.
And oh my god, I tried out the waifu game.
What? Which
Genshin
one?
Impact. I tried it.
You tried a Genshin.
Yeah. It's fun.
It's a good game. Okay.
It is a nice way to pass the time. And it's a pretty game. Not gonna lie. Like,
I completely forgot to mention this, but I also have played some Genshin. Probably like I don't know, 15-ish hours, maybe less.
Oh,
so
you're a lot farther than me.
Yeah, so here's the thing about Genshin Impact. As a seasoned veteran of gacha games, right?
Yeah.
Genshin Impact is probably the most well fleshed out game, at least on launch, with like the most interesting gameplay, because it's an open world action RPG. Right? So it's like Breath of the Wild, except your weapons won't break after you swing it twice. And there's like
there is a game here.
There is a legitimate entirely.
Yes.
Listen, if somebody said pay $60 for this game, I would not bat an eyelash. I'd be like, yeah, that seems about right. But it's a free game, and it's honestly shockingly competent and impressive and well put together, very polished.
Yes.
Japanese, Chinese, Korean, English voice acting, lots of dialogue, lots of voiced dialogue, characters with actually maybe some interesting things about them that I feel like they're written a little bit, and like it's a shockingly good game for something that is completely free, except for one or two things, which is one, the resin system sucks. It sucks. It is a way for so basically the resin system is there's things around the map called wells, and there's also dungeons that you have to use resin to enter. So that means you have a limited kind of resource that you have to manage for entering dungeons and opening ley lines, which are essentially like treasure chests, right? There are kind of treasure chests that give you a very specific item, either money, which you do need a lot of, or I think like character upgrade materials. I don't actually pay that close attention, to be honest. I just know you're supposed to do them, and it has an upper cap of 120. Takes 20 to open a ley line and 23-ish to like go into a dungeon. That system sucks because you get one of those back every 8 minutes. So it takes 160 minutes, which is more than 2 hours for you to be able to like recover the resin that you lost going into a dungeon. And like that's just not fun, right? Not getting to play the game is not fun. Obviously, it is something that exists in a lot of gacha games, the idea of a stamina system, or so you can't play all the time forever, so that it artificially limits you in how much you can progress, but also rewards you for paying money, because you can pay money to refill the resource. The other thing I dislike about it is the gacha system. And this is absolutely rich coming from me.
Here we go.
Because I play Grand Blue Fantasy, which like has like a really aggressive gacha system. But Genshin Impact's gacha system is the most predatory gacha system I've ever seen in a game. Because it has it is a 0.6% 5-star rate. To get a 5-star anything, there's a 0.6% chance you get it in any given roll.
Right.
But there is a pity timer, essentially. So after 90 rolls, you will get a 5-star character.
Is it 90 is a lot.
90 is a lot of rolls. Yeah, if you're playing completely free to play, it is very difficult to hit this number. But 90 is when you hit the pity timer, and then it resets. And if you go another 90, you hit the pity timer again. And if you haven't gotten the Wrapup character on the special banner yet, you will get that character guaranteed. That is not the worst, because that is that's less rolls than most systems that have a sparking system, I guess, is what it's called, because of Granblue, because Granblue basically invented the sparking system, where if you roll a certain number of times, you get to choose a character on the banner and you can have it. Except in Genshin, you have to roll 180 times to 100% guarantee the character that is on the banner that you want. But if you want a character that is not on the banner, you have to roll a lot, because they're not guaranteed for you ever. You just have to hit the pity timer and hope you get the right one. Now, the 0.6% 5-star rate is also shared with weapons. So 5-star weapons and 5-star characters are in the same 0.6% chance.
No! So your 0.6% chance is further divided by weapons. And, oh my god, that's heinous.
And
dude.
Not only that, Renu, this is the worst part about it. If you get a duplicate character, like if you get another version of the character, or another copy of the character, you get an upgrade material for that character that you feed the character, and it unlocks a new ability for them. So your character gets stronger the more you roll that character, which means if you have a really low percent chance to drop something and you want to upgrade your character to his maximum potential, you need to roll an unfathomable amount of times. I watched somebody drop $1,100 trying to roll for a character that never dropped.
$1,100?
Yeah, there is a video out there of somebody spending $4,000 on the banner.
Oh my god.
$4,000.
Why would you do this? Oh my god.
That's nuts. Anyway, Genshin Impact is the most predatory gacha system I've ever seen in my life. But if you just never engage with it, you have a really great free-to-play Breath of the Wild clone. And no joke, some of the areas are much more interesting than Breath of the Wild. Breath of the Wild is a lot of open space, and you do a lot of running around and walking. In contrast, Genshin is very dense. There's always something to do in the distance. Like you always see something else that you can gravitate towards. It's a lot of fun.
I've noticed that.
It's a lot of fun to just kind of roam around and see what you can get up to.
Yeah.
And there's like daily quests and all that kind of stuff. But overall, like, it's an impressively well put together game with a super predatory gacha system because it's a single player game almost exclusively. There's like a little bit of co-op, there's a little bit of multiplayer, but almost exclusively it's a single player game, which means people are more likely to excuse it for having predatory gacha because, well, it's just a single player game. You don't get a competitive advantage, and for some reason that's the only thing gamers think matters, which is that doesn't. People with addictive personalities are just gonna... Somebody spent $10,000 on a Transformers mobile game, and it sucks. And, like, what even?
God.
How? How do you not have everything in the game at that point?
Stop.
Anyway, yeah, again, I have complicated feelings about Genshin. I really, really do.
Yeah. I think if you're just playing it to, like, enjoy the open world RPG, that it offers, then I think it's a lot of it'll reward your time. Definitely don't play it for the gacha, because I've heard similar things from other people who are also like super into gacha and that kind of stuff. Like they do not recommend Genshin for gacha.
It's interesting because you can actually see that like milder gachas have inoculated gacha players against Genshin, but people who play Genshin, because it's not a gacha game necessarily, right? It doesn't market itself as a gacha game. It markets itself as a free-to-play open world action RPG. And then people who would not play other forms of gacha are like, ooh, what's this? And then end up spending a lot of money. So like initially I was like, who would spend money on this, right? Like who would spend why would you make this huge investment of a game? This map is wild. It's massive. It's a huge. There's 2 continents in it now, and they're gonna add like 6 more. Right? The development cost must be intense.
Right.
So
But if they're
like,
making like $4,000, $10,000 off of individual players,
yeah, that's when you learn like, oh, the gacha system is catching people who have never played a gacha before, and it's catching them hard, and you're like, wow. So suddenly it becomes not just like it's not how does they make money, it's wow, how much money are they going to make?
yeah,
for
they're already making,
for basically innovating a new way to make money in the video game space, a new exploitative way to make money. That's actually ridiculous. But it's also hard to compete against a game that has so much content for free.
Yeah.
Like, it's kind of nuts.
Yeah, they already put the investment down for their game, and they've already got it rolling.
Yeah.
And
I tell you, Chinese companies are just... Oof.
Yeah.
They're in it. They're in it to win it.
They're scary, man. Yeah.
Like, MiHoYo took all of their Honkai Third Impact money, and they just were like, we're gonna develop Genshin Impact. By the way, Honkai Third Impact and Genshin Impact have no official relationship to each other, despite the fact that they are produced by the same company and both include the word impact.
Yeah. I was like, when Genshin Impact first came out, I was like, this sounds like that other game. Turns out.
But yeah, so that's Genshin Impact. Anyway, you were saying, where can we find you on the internet? What are you up to?
Anyway, yeah. Anyway, I said my socials. I played that game. I've been playing Monster Hunter World, and hopefully by next week I'll know where our foster kitty's status will be.
That's good.
Whether he'll be on the mend or he'll need more serious treatment. So, yeah, that's about it.
Cool.
Yeah, how about you?
You can find me all the places at Literal Soup, which is actually now relevant again because I'm doing things on the internet like writing essays and playing video games on the internet. So if you are interested, and you have at this point missed the Dark Souls streams, but they're all on my YouTube channel. Obviously, Literal Soup. You can just find that.
Woohoo!
I'll link to it. But all of the VODs are saved there. You can see all of my shenanigans. I die a lot by falling. I fall off the map so many times.
That sounds like me.
Yeah,
I would do that.
I just can't control my character, apparently. I fall a lot, but just whatever. But yeah, I finished Dark Souls in about 29 and a half hours. I didn't do a ton of exploring necessarily. I just kind of beat the game. But it was really fun. I had a good time with that. And all of the VODs are saved on my YouTube. You can see sometimes I turn on the kitten cam because my cat likes to sit on my desk. And I just angle the camera down and I just turn it on, and you can just see him sleeping there while I play Dark Souls. But I'm probably gonna play Yakuza at some point in the near future. That the first stream for that might be coming up after this episode launches, even. So that's exciting. You know, other than that, I'm doing what I do. I do some writing on the side. I do some shit posting on Twitter. I somewhat exist. I don't know. It's been a weird thing. Yeah, I've been feeling a little bit more productive lately, which is very nice since I do too many things.
Good.
But yeah, that's where you can find me. And I think that's it. I think yeah.
That's it.
So once again, our opening is by Scotchy Network, and our ending is by Takuma Kara. And the patrons we are thanking this month are Evan, Frostfall, Cheru, Sean, Magpie Mirtest, Claire, and Dylan. Thank you so much for your support. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
We really appreciate your continued support. And everybody else listening, thank you for listening.
Thank you. See you next time.
ようなら。また明日ね。